All right, why don't you take it away and show us, talk about the deep state, man. They're on full display for us. Like, when you said that, hey, what are you talking about today? You said deep state on full display. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's some really bad stuff been going on in the last couple of days, huh?
Yeah, well, listen, so ever since last night, I've been working on this report, nonstop. And at the end, I had a really long, it's like a 30-minute. So I took mercy on you guys. So my presentation is only about 4 minutes long. I want to leave room for Rob and I to chime in. But I do have a little presentation to kind of set the stage for the conversation. So,
all right, let's do it.
Yeah, video. Okay, so the Durham report was finally released last night, and it confirmed what we basically already knew. But let's take a look at the news.
Romance for lovers only.
Okay, so let's start by looking at the actual news.
The Durham report was released today. Now, and according to the Gateway Pundit, Special Counsel John Durham released his final report concluding that the FBI had no verified intel, none, when it opened its Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Trump back in 2016. It had nothing, no verified intelligence. Now, Jake Tapper, of all people, just said moments ago that it does exonerate Donald Trump. Jake Tapper on CNN.
Okay.
And says that this is devastating to the FBI.
But I'm going to warn you in advance because this is breaking news, happened within the last hour. And already most headlines are saying Trump era special counsel final report criticizes FBI's Russia probe. So you can already see how they're trying to spin this before we even read it, that this special counsel that was hired under the Trump administration to look into the investigation of how the FBI looked into Russiagate, because it was appointed by Trump, what they're telling you in this headline is that it is automatically flawed.
There will be no arrests, according to the report. The American people were lied to for years that the intel community had been working feverishly to, basically attempt their coup on President Trump. We saw that, of course, a lot in the Twitter files. We saw that with the social media reports that, of course, how they were colluding with social media companies to keep the Hunter Biden laptop story quiet, but also pushing the story about Trump and Russia. They all knew it was a lie, according to this report. They all knew. They had no evidence at all and launched this report. What its agents were finding about the Steele memos that they ordered, no more memos were to be written.
Okay, so to kind of give you a taste, to remind everyone of what we lived through many years, let's take a look at a few clips from the past.
There's one reporter he doesn't seem to have a problem with, tweeting, "Thank you, Eli Lake," after an otherwise critical Bloomberg journalist expressed dismay at the classified information being leaked. Is this a big deal?
It's a very big deal. He was taken out by a campaign of leaks that had to have come from the intelligence community. In this respect, Flynn is the appetizer, Donald Trump is the entree.
Well, a brand new report by the Washington Post details the key timeline of how former British spy Christopher Steele, who wrote the now infamous Trump dossier, became a flashpoint in the Russia investigation. The report says, quote, "In the fall of 2016, a little more than a month before Donald Trump was elected president, Christopher Steele had the undivided attention of the FBI. He had grown so worried about what he had learned from his Russia network about the Kremlin's plans that he told colleagues it was like, quote, sitting on a nuclear weapon."
And so, no, the information, I personally believe information is very credible. And I think Steele found himself, he left the British spy agency, went into business by himself, and then he gets hired by Fusion GPS, and he is alarmed, and I think he's a patriot, not an American patriot, a British patriot, but owes...
Well, I mean, saying the dossier is fake news doesn't make it fake news. It's just an assertion. My name is Luke Harding. I'm a journalist and a writer, and my new book is called Collusion, and it's about Donald Trump and Russia. According to people I've talked to who are kind of close to him, believes that the dossier is not flawless. One or two things may be wrong. He acknowledges that it's raw intelligence, but broadly, he thinks is right, and he says it's between 70 and 90% correct. That's his.
Now, the Trump-Russia story now exists in 3 different realities. That was House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes on O'Reilly a few minutes ago. He's saying he has seen strong evidence that President Trump was spied upon by the Obama administration, but none that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government. Meanwhile, Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin says he has seen, quote, damning evidence of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, but he says journalists will likely publish it in the near future. The rest of us are stuck in a third reality with no proof for either claim. Perhaps Congressman Pocan can change that. He is on the set tonight. Congressman,
take a look at all of this, and then we can move on. And that's what the public's really asking for.
But you know what's really going on, which is the NSA, the National Security Agency, has all the data on everything. They've tapped into the trunk lines, every email communication in the United States, every phone call, maybe some of our thoughts are being recorded and stored by the NSA. So they know exactly the degree to which the Russians interfered or didn't, the degree to which the president was spied upon during the campaign or not. Why doesn't the Intel Committee in the House and the Senate say, produce documents now? Now.
Yeah, well,
and the president should say that too.
And it would have worked perfectly that way had, especially on the House side, the head of the Intel Committee not kind of stumbled through this process. And the fact, and let's have that independent commission come in.
Let's be honest. I mean, look, I've had Schiff on this show, Congressman Schiff of Burbank, who's on the Intel Committee, and I asked a couple pretty normal questions. I thought, like, where's the evidence, for example? And he called me an agent of the Kremlin.
Hey, stop putting out deep state narratives, whatever you... Imagine being that dickhead on stage saying that it's 90% true. What a dickhead. How could you ever possibly know any of that information? It's impossible. You're just muted there.
Yeah. You know, at least you don't have this problem in Australia, right, Rob? So
we have different problems here in Australia, man.
You know, so imagine you're the president of the United States, and your own CIA, your own FBI, your own DOJ, they're out to get you, man. That I mean, talk about being lost at sea. I mean, who do you? I mean, Trump wanted to drain the swamp. Well, the entire swamp is full of monsters that are going to attack you the moment you show up. Look, this is in my opinion, this is going to go down as the most disgraceful event in American history. And now the deep state has been there forever. But what Trump did is he kind of like brought them to the surface. He kind of like made them reveal themselves. He kind of, because the things they had to do were so blatant and so obvious. And like you and I were talking about before we hit the record button, the truth always eventually comes out. Now, it might not be right away. It might take a while, but eventually the truth always comes out. At least if you're in some kind of a freedom-loving society, eventually someone finds the truth. But okay, I always get these images, right? So this image I have regarding this is it's kind of like, have you ever seen those car chases in LA where they're in the helicopter and they're recording this high-speed chase, and this guy is racing through. Does this guy really think he's going to get away? These guys always get caught.
Yeah, the road spikes come out, they'll have a crash, or the cops will just cut them off and catch them. Yeah, you're going to get caught. You're 100% right. I want to, before I kind of add my comments there to it, Ed, I want to say, just have a look in the show notes, folks. After I finish the recording here, I'm going to add the Redacted channel in there. Make sure you head over to Clayton and Natalie Morris's channel over there. It's called Redacted. Check that out because it's really good. They do a really good job of staying ahead of the headlines, and no one, there's no point in us trying to redo what they're already doing. They do a great job there. Yesterday, when I'd finished all the editing and I went out for my morning workout, I put my headphones in and I just looked at YouTube quickly, and that report had just come out. And I was listening to a Fox report where the journalist was kind of going through it on the air. And it's like, we knew this was all fake. The whole thing was fake. The thing that I want to highlight there is that in hindsight, when we look back at these things, they're stupid and laughable, right? But in real time, when these things are unfolding in front of you, you can't help but being drawn into the narrative by going, well, hey, what if that is true? Like, far out, man. That's like really serious. If that is true and that's what's going on. And You can't help but being drawn into it. And I want to pull back the curtain and show people the unspoken truth of how the deep state control you. And when I say it, you'll go, oh, yeah, of course, how else would they do it? But what they're doing is they're creating a narrative and they're perpetuating a narrative that makes you feel scared. Because if you feel scared, then they're able to control you. And if you listen to the word of what some of the things that they're saying in those reports, oh, it's like as bad as a nuclear weapon. So what is the worst possible thing in humanity? Nuclear war. Yeah, well, maybe you could argue there's probably some other things, but that would be in the top 3 for sure. And they're saying that, this is like a nuclear bomb about to go off. And the language that they use and the verbiage that they use to describe these things is designed to polarize you into fear. And then when you're scared, this virus is going to kill millions and millions of people. And you're like, well, there's plenty of viruses that have killed millions of people, and I live in Australia and Sydney, and I've never seen any of them. What are you talking about? But everybody rolls up their sleeve and goes, please give me an experiment. You can experiment on me. And when somebody does that, they're doing that out of compliance. They're so scared. They're so unbelievably scared that they'll comply with anything an authority figure will tell them to do. And that's what the deep state are trying to get you to do. They're trying to get you to comply with their narrative, to control you. And everything there is designed around power. And, it really only kind of hinges on a handful of people in the scheme of things, really just Hillary Clinton getting that Steele dossier going. And from there, the whole thing, it's like this war. Vladimir Putin went across the border and started the war thinking that he'd roll up Kyiv in just a couple of days. Hillary Clinton probably put that out there thinking, I'll roll up Donald Trump pretty quickly in a couple of weeks when the world really sees him for what he is, and creating some fake narrative that's out there. But you just can't control the circumstances and the way people react. And to your point, Ed, if somebody is not lying and it's true, the truth always comes out, man. It always comes out.
Yeah, but in the meantime, while we're waiting for the truth to come out, it can cause an awful lot of damage.
Very damaging, isn't it?
I mean, the net effect of all that it put our country through for years. First of all, it increased the polarization in our country an immeasurable amount. It really made people so much more tribal. So you had that effect, but also it slowed down, if not stopped in its tracks, a lot of Trump's agendas, the things he wanted to get done. So that's the ultimate form of takeover, of a coup. They effectively pulled off a coup because he wasn't able to do all the things that he wanted to do in his presidency. I think that the deep state, they pride themselves on not being public. Okay, they largely want to be unnoticed. Okay, they don't want you to know. They'll just quietly go about controlling you. But I think they were forced to do something bold in order. If we're going to take this guy down, because I think the deep state saw Trump as an existential threat. He was a completely different kind of animal. He's not your traditional politician. There's no filter between his brain and his mouth. Okay, so now in a lot of ways, that's not so good because there are many times when I winced. Oh, come on. But at least you knew that he was saying what he believed. And right away, that made him a different animal as a politician, because, like him or lump him, you knew what was on his mind. So
that's the reality is that right there is the unspoken truth. When a politician comes out and makes you wince, that is because he's just speaking his truth and he's living his truth. He has no reason to lie about anything. And when you think about all of the discourse that was created as a result of all of this deep state and Steele dossier garbage that's out there, the people that it's a very simple equation, right? You see it on every Netflix crime doco that's ever existed. Follow the money, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if you don't follow the money and you can't follow the money for whatever reason, you just got to look at who stands to gain the most from that. So the discourse that they create, trying to get rid of Donald Trump, who stood to gain the most from that? Well, Hillary Clinton. Oh, I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. But it's now been proven that 100% of it was her. Like, what? And what's the consequence? She doesn't even have to come out publicly and say, sorry. I saw something yesterday about Hillary Clinton. Maybe you can tell me if this is true or not. I don't know, but So I'd been listening to this thing on YouTube. It only went for 15 minutes, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's all fake. It's all bullshit, right? And, keep walking along, and I got to the end. I got to the turnaround point of my workout where I sit down on this. I usually sit down there for about 10 minutes and just enjoy the view, right? I take my headphones out and look. But I was just scrolling through my Twitter just for a second, right? And I looked, and there's a picture of Hillary Clinton at like a public event. And it looks like a recent picture of her. And it says, Hillary Clinton has called for all cash payments to go away because of climate change. And I'm like, that's enough for me this morning. I put my phone down and I thought, whether that's true or not, that is just like the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. Is it true?
Well, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
She did say that. It's not a meme.
That is true. No, that is true.
What's wrong with these people, man?
Yeah, well, you got to wonder who's listening to this woman anymore.
All credibility gone, huh? All credibility gone.
That just shows you how tribal our country has become.
Yeah.
Once you adopt an ideology, your leader doesn't matter. Your leader is impervious. It doesn't matter the stupidity that comes out of their mouths, because I don't know. It's like a cult. It's like you can't do wrong once you're ahead of a cult. Everything you do has got to be right.